So, Wilson Morales from Black Film TV. How's it going, everyone?
Good. How are you,
Hey
Wilson?
Wilson,
Doing
how you
well, man.
doing?
How are you?
Good. Obviously, I've always known the name John Wayne Gacy, but it was before my time, so I never really knew the crime. I just knew he was a serial killer that got executed. For each one of you, what led you to say yes to taking on the roles that you're playing? And obviously, are any of these guys still alive that you talked to them? Chris?
Yeah, I mean, all three of us will probably talk about our conversations with Patrick McManus, the creator of the show, and his unique approach in focusing on the stories of the victims. That was an attractive part of coming to this project. If we're going to spend this much time relaying such a dark story, it was a big motivator to have. Um, a positive take on how to tell this story and to focus on the victims and to stay mindful of the communities that need to be acknowledged throughout this process. I mean, even in the airing of it, there's an impact campaign attached to each and every episode for anyone who's looking for help. So that that was the main thing that attracted me to it, and I've been a fan of the darker genres for a long time. I think we as human beings have a fascination with the shadow, and oftentimes it's helpful to look at the darkness around us in order to look at the darkness in ourselves. So it's an interesting process, but it can be tricky when it comes to true crime versus fictionalized horror or something like that.
James?
Yeah, as Chris said, we all had this initial relationship with the material. We're like, wow, this is different, and we're telling the story from a different point of view. And Patrick and his team, you know, um, championed that, and I'm grateful for it. You know, I you want to work with good people. I love the people who are involved in this, and you want to show up for, you want to believe in the stories that you're telling. You want to be able to work with good people who are going to throw down and come with and their A game, and this is one of those projects, and especially for me personally, just I've known Michael Chernus for a long time, and I've watched his work for a long time on stage. I've worked with him in film, and knowing what a huge undertaking this was going to be for him. A lot of us knew him, and I think we all showed up for him.
And what about you, Michael? Obviously, playing a lawyer and early on in in episode one, obviously you make it clear that like, okay, you're not just any lawyer who's bound to defend the client, but you're out there to make sure that like we know who this guy is. Don't let him go. Anybody who just sees from episode one, and they have to watch the rest to see how it plays out.
It, it's such a great observation about Sam, and I think it's a very acute one. He's not unemotional about this case, meaning he's also affected by the horrific things that Casey did, and he has to stare that man in the face, and he has to spend the most time with him, and he has to defend him. And a lot of people's reaction is a good luck with that, or how could you do such a thing? And um that's the emotional turmoil of that character. It's not to say that it's not an ethical dilemma, because it really is, but that gray area is what makes Sam such an interesting character. And he's not the hero or the villain in this story. He's doing a job that has to be done according to our justice system. But you said it, where this show had such a specific approach, and Patrick McManus, from what I was told about him before I even talked to him on the phone, was that he was a really great guy. And that's what Badge was alluding to. I had just had a baby. My wife and I had a 1-month-old daughter, so going away to work for 6 months, and then it was the endorsement of Patrick as a person and how that was going to be how that trickle down effect was going to affect the shooting. But then it was this cast and it was this character. There were a lot of very attractive things about this show from a job from an acting point of view, and then it was the awareness and the accountability that the show also took on that was so attractive about it.
We're getting a lot of these stories about serial killers and how they got caught. And in some shows, they show a certain level of humanity, especially if it's a series, to show this guy wasn't always this way. And with this shows, obviously, as you guys are mentioning, it's to showcase and to have sympathy for the families involved. How much research do each one of you do with the characters you're playing to see that for anybody who knows these guys, they're looking at you guys as the vessel to say, okay, they got it right in terms of either personality or from what they knew back then. Chris?
I mean, there was a large amount of research that was given to us, by the production itself, and there were the documentaries, and of course, there's all of the endless amount of information out there about Gacy. As far as interacting with people from the case, few of us, some had more outlets than others, but it can be a tricky relationship for creators who are trying to tell a story to be in communication with people who lived the story, because obviously we can never one for one recreate how things happened or how people behaved, or um but we can hope to capture what it felt like to be present in those moments, and hopefully we can accurately tell the story to raise the awareness that we're trying to raise.
What about you, James, in terms of nailing down who Joe is?
Let me unmute myself. There was an element to Joe where I felt like his purpose is kind of shepherding this thing along and listen a lot. I wanted to listen a lot. I wanted to sit back and listen and be present, and like we're not only we're covering something that happened so long ago, we're also covering a lot of territory in a short period of time. Even though it's 8 hours, there's a lot more to this. We could have gone off in a lot of different directions and told all these different stories, and I think I'm very happy that the onus and the concentration was on the victims and their families, but just in that little area of Joe. um, it was, you have to kind of let all this stuff sit to the side a little bit, and you have to also bring your own personality to it and your own heartbeat and your own instincts. And so, when all said is done, and I think it's for all three of us, like I love watching these guys when the cameras roll on and see what they're going to do, because it's unpredictable. You know what I mean? And it's not because it's not an imitation. They're real, live, living fucking human beings. Sorry, excuse my language, but that's the I think the passion everyone brings to their work, whether you're playing a real character or not. um, so there is that moment where you got to let the real guy kind of sit to the side, and then you take over.
Why do you think there's a fascination with people that want to see these stories told? We know what happened. These guys are villains. We know for some of them they've already been executed. Some of them are still in jail. But there's a fascination by, the world that wants to see, from true crime podcast now being made a series. Like, obviously we live in business where there's a certain thing that's happening, a moment where now, okay, who's going to be the next guy that they're going to do, but there's an audience that wants to see this stuff. For any one of you that can answer this, some of you may be a fan of this stuff, some of you may not, but why do you think there's a fascination for an audience that wants to see these stories?
What When it comes to the horror genre, Horror films are a dress rehearsal for handling and facing fear in a safe environment. You know, we go to these movies to sit in a, if you're going to the theater, to sit in a room with other people to watch a harrowing event, to see how you handle that level of anxiety or fear, or to face a certain demon. You know, demon movies are just people running from themselves. You know, it's we're fascinated with the shadow. And when it comes to true crime, we look at these stories and these monsters, you know, the Gacy's or Dahmer, whoever it is, these men were children at some point. These men were someone's sons. And there's something about the human condition where we go, what went wrong? How because I also was a child. I also was someone's son. And so how did I end up here? And how did this person end up being one of the most violent, brutal human beings in the world? And that is terrifying to us. And as I've learned having kids, the oftentimes the only way to assuage our fear is to look at it, you know, to analyze it, to figure out how it works, or why it works, or what went wrong. You know, when my son has a dark shadow in his room that he is unclear as to what it is, we shine a light on it to show him what it is. And so I think that there's I think that's where people find a value in these types of stories.
Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure talking to each one of you. Obviously, there's an audience that's watching this unfold as it is. So, just for each one of you, just keep doing the work that you do. I'm a fan of each one of your work. And so, I'm sure I'll talk to you down the road on whatever projects you guys do next. Have a good
Thanks,
one.
Wilson.
Thank you, Wilson. See you, man.